Good news, tube amp lovers. If you're somebody who has a tube rig and you've got some pedals and you really like to use them and you're mainly a tube amp player, but the inconvenience of a tube amp is getting in the way, well, the answer is here. In fact, the answer's been here for years, but you just might not know about it, or you might have forgotten about it. So we're going to be looking at the Two Notes Captor. So the Two Notes Captor, well, what is it? It's a reactive load box. So if you've got a tube amp, you plug your speaker out into this and then you plug this into your speaker. Doesn't sound particularly sexy, but this is probably the most important piece of guitar kit that I own, and I should have got into these years and years ago. So as I said, this is not a new bit of kit, okay? This has been around for a long time. So I find that I am actually demoing or reviewing bits of old kit, which is a bit strange, but it's because it's actual kit that I use and have used for a long time and I think deserves a bit more love and a bit more attention. And these things are critical bits of guitar gear if you play tube amps. So what this thing really does and why this is essential to you if you are a tube amp player is this reduces the volume that your guitar amp is putting out, okay? So this can reduce the volume of your guitar amp by 20 decibels. That is a lot, that is an awful lot, okay? So it means that you can crank your amplifier and have this thing taking 20 decibels off it, which means that you can play it at home much more easier than you can without this, okay? So I play with a 10 watt Blackstar amplifier. Some magazines and people that have reviewed that said you can play that at home. You can't. You cannot play a 10 watt valve amplifier at home without some level of attenuation, okay? Before I was using that, I was using a Fender 5 watt Champ. You cannot play that amplifier at home without attenuation. You just can't, particularly the Champ, because that just has one control, volume control. So to get the thing cooking, you got to turn it up, which means it's loud. It's producing an awful lot of volume. And if you can't control that, well, the police are going to come and control that for you, okay? Tube amps that you can play at home do not exist. Do not believe the marketing spin and things that people put on them. They do not exist. You get some tube amps you can put down to like half a watt or 1 watt and they can sound okay, but with tube amps you've got to crank them, okay? They have like that window of operation that they've got to work in, and if you get it into that window they sound phenomenal, and nothing else sounds like a tube amp. Nothing else sounds like a tube amp. But that window of operation is going to be when the controls are turned up, when the volume controls are turned up, the thing starts cooking, the thing starts sounding great. And even at 5 watts, even at 1 watt, that is going to produce an awful lot of sound for playing at home. So this thing is essential if you have a tube amp. This also does something else, okay? It has like a cab sim on it. Now this isn't a digital cab sim, this is an analog cab simulator, and it sounds really, really good. So I used to use this thing live, I still do sometimes, because you can just run through this and then into your amp without any attenuation. So the attenuation that this thing offers you is either 20 decibels or nothing. So you can just run straight through it and into your amp. But by doing that, you get to use the line out. So I use the cab sim on this and it produces a pretty good sound. All of the sound examples in this video are using the cab sim on this. It's just simple. There's no loading IRs, there's no moving microphones around. You've got an option to have the microphone straight on or at an angle, and that's it. That's the only option you have. There's no mic types, room types, cab types, moving the mic around, reverb types, none of that. You just plug your amplifier running through this, have an XLR coming out, and that is the sound of your cabinet. Because this is a load box, this will take all of the power from your amplifier and just keep it in here. It actually has a little fan which responds like a speaker, so it's quite cool. When you kick it, you hear the fan kicking in. It's quite smart. So with this, you can play silently at home and get mic'd up tube guitar sounds. That's the dream, isn't it? You get to use all your pedals, you get to use your guitar the same way. All that knowledge that you have of using a guitar amplifier and using your guitar and pedals and your hands to get the sounds that you want, all that remains the same. You just use this. So don't hate me too much, okay? But you don't really need to go out and buy a modeling amp. If you're somebody who has a tube rig and you have some pedals and that is your sound, you don't need to replace that. You don't need to go and find a floor unit or a digital unit to replace that. Get yourself an attenuator. Go and get one of these. My tube amp is the tone that I love. It is amazing and it is great. And with this, I still get to have that tone. I still get to go onto stage. I can play silently on stage if needed, and I've had to do that quite a lot. I'll use in-ear monitors and I just give the sound person the feed from here and they're getting my full tube amp and I'm getting to control it using all my pedals and all this craft and know-how that I have of how to use my valve amp. When I had my floor units, I had to learn how to use them, and I had two rigs. I had my valve rig and then I had my sort of digital rig. Now some of those rigs can be useful, they can be important if size is something. So if you need just to go onto a stage and you need something very small you can throw in front of you and go, then yeah, but that's a different kind of rig, okay? If you are able to take your valve amplifier with you but you're just not because it is loud or it is inconvenient, again, this saves that. A lot of the times people go for a digital solution to this problem that we have with valve amps, is that they're very loud and that you can't mic them up at home, or to record with them is difficult because they make so much volume. If you're in a studio or somewhere where you can make a lot of noise, that's not an issue. But if you're not somewhere where you can make a lot of noise, then it is an issue. And we tend to go for other solutions like digital modeling amps or some solid state amps, where if you're a tube person, just go and buy one of these. Then you can use your same rig. You know, I cannot stress how much these things are so essential if you're a tube amp player. You know, they're just the most important thing you can have. You cannot play a tube amp at home or at a lower volume without some level of attenuation. turning down the volume is not the same. You've got to actually manipulate the power of the amplifier or sort out the amount of power that it's throwing out, and that's what this does. My other rig that I use is a Boss neck tone, and that is a brilliant piece of kit. If you've ever used one and you especially plug it into a computer, there is an awful lot of options. There's a lot of negotiation you have to do with an amplifier like that, or with any kind of amplifier which is modeling different things. You know, I've used to use line 6 floor units and headrush floor units. There's a huge amount of negotiation that you have to do to get the sounds that you want. And being quite old school or being like a tube amp player, that can be annoying, because you're like, well, I've got my tube amp, but I can't use it because it's inconvenient. It's way too loud for this situation. Just use this. There's no negotiation. There's no sorting stuff out. Just plug your amplifier through it. You've got a line out, XLR cab simulated line out, and you're good to go. There's no messing around with stuff, having to pick microphones, having to EQ stuff. You just go with it. But if you are somebody, and I kind of am, who likes to tinker with microphone types, move mic placement, cab sims, you can just take a direct feed from this with zero cab sim. If you buy one of these Two Notes, then you get access to their wall of sound software, which just gives you a whole library full of different cabinet simulations, different mics, different rooms, different reverbs, lots of different sound sculpting that you can do in your digital audio workstation, in your DAW, okay? So you can do that if you like. Or, I've had this for a long time, okay? And something that I use in conjunction with this is this. Now, I'm not going to do a large talking about this, but all this is a cabinet and mic and room simulator. So you can take a feed from this without a cab sim, run it into an IR pedal, and then you've got a lot more options on what you can do. But then we're starting to build up quite a piece of gear, and I don't tend to do that live because it's quite annoying. You end up going up with your amplifier, you've then got this, and then you've got a cab simulator pedal, and it gets quite a lot, requires even quite a lot of power. But playing live, I've used this many times and just used the cab simulator on this because it's brilliant. This thing is passive. It does not require power to do attenuation. If you want to use the cab sim, it requires phantom power, but that's fine. So it's still kind of passive in a way that you can just have this sitting behind your guitar amp, front of house run into here, and they phantom power that. Everyone's happy. So I don't really want to talk about this too much, but just to say that if you're a tube amp guy, this thing is going to save you from being terrorized by your household and the neighbors calling the police round. But more importantly, this thing could save you a huge amount of money in thinking, I need to run multiple rigs. I need to have my valve tube rig with all my pedals that I bought, and I need to run like a modeling rig or a digital rig, something else which allows me to run a more convenient and sort of more friendly way when I'm at studios or when I'm at concerts. I can just take line outs and stuff like that. This will do all of that for you and just sits in with your tube rig. So when I say this thing can save you money, you can buy this from Anderton's today for 179 UK pounds brand new. That's all right. That's much cheaper than a digital floor unit, much cheaper. Second hand, you'll be able to buy this thing way cheaper. If you want to spend a bit more money, you can get the Captor X, which is the same thing. It's this, but it has this built into it. It's got cab sims and IRs and all that stuff built into it. But that's way more expensive. That's like £400. For me, this thing is all you need. I wish I got into these things years and years and years ago. I used to have a Fender Blues Junior amplifier which was way too loud for me to use at home. So I just didn't get on with it because I couldn't get it where it should be working. I just couldn't play it that loud. If I'd had one of these, I could have. So do yourself a favor, guys, get one of these if you're a tube amp player, or get some level of attenuation. Don't believe the hype that you can play tube amps at home. You can't. They are way too loud. You can get a noise out of them, but it's not the noise that you want. It's not why you bought the tube amp. You bought the tube amp for that warmth and that saturation. That only happens when you start to turn it up, but at that point it's going to be shaking the walls. So get one of these and it doesn't shake the walls, but it still sounds the same. Let me know, what's your thoughts on attenuation? Do you think that it's pretty good? Do you have any amps that have actual attenuators built into them? Do you use Two Notes? Are you a big fan of this? Do you have any kind of experience of before you got into attenuation and then after you got into attenuation, and how much your family loved you even more for that? Yeah, let me know. And usual social media stuff, give me a like, give me a follow, and I shall see you soon.